Get this right. So I'm really pleased to be here. Actually, it's the first time I was thinking for me to speak at the Polish conference. I'm really, really grateful due to the fact that I live here, not in Kraków, but in Warsaw. So really happy to have you also here joining us for the talks. What makes a great iOS game? I wanted to pick today on a few topics around building a great game for the iOS platform, more from a general perspective. All the gentlemen here will later on dig deeper into specifics around marketing, analytics, and so on and so forth. So a few words about myself. I started in the old media business, working for FM radio. When I was fed up mobile, this was back in 2007, kind of came around. I had the opportunity to start my own company, built a mobile video application called DailyMe, which is thriving in the #1 currently in the German-speaking market. When we achieved profitability, I left the company on an operational level and founded a company called Dynamo Partners. Together with 3 partners, we consult. We help companies, brands, developers to be successful with their mobile applications, their mobile websites, or their mobile services in general. We're pretty agnostic, so we're not working only with game developers. We work with news publishing houses, security apps, fitness trackers, you call it. So I think we're pretty good in applying best practice and benchmark certain things which work. So the topics of my talk mainly covering the stages every one of you probably has encountered while developing or building a game, building an application. At first, I want to talk a little bit on the conceptual side of things, really figuring out what is the purpose of my development, how it will end up in terms of adding value to the user's life, to the user's problem, solving it, and how you hopefully are ending up making money out of it, so adding value to yourself as well. Second thing, only a few things I want to scratch in terms of what might be really helpful during the development process. As soon as the product's done, the app's built, the game is developed, you will enter the phase of user acquisition, mobile marketing. Also here, only a few takeaways for you guys to apply later on when you're at home or in the studio working together with your teams, trying to market the game as good as possible. And last but not least, Richard will elaborate later on, definitely more than I will do, why it's so important to have a really look on your users' behavior, the data, so to speak. Let's start with the first part. Obviously, every one of us has the great opportunity to be involved in the mobile ecosystem, to have its own company going, working for a mobile development house, building your own game, and so on and so forth. But when you are fresh to it, and I experienced that a lot talking to even bigger brands who haven't done anything on mobile or haven't built a game or an application, they're really enthusiastic, saying, hey, let's do this application, and then we just put it in the market and off we go. We're going to be rich, famous, and successful. That's not how it works. So usually, and that's obvious, the user's perspective comes first. Think about what, as I said, extra added value you can bring to his life, to the table, when building and developing a certain application. But on the other hand, it's at the same time, in those first initial days, it's really, really important to already consider what you want to take out of it. So thinking about either making money, developing yourself, your team, and ending up successful. So what helped me a lot in those initial stages of getting the picture right, so to speak, before coding the first lines, was a thing called application definition statement, which is pretty basic, but it helps always, whenever you take it out, to remember whom you're building your app for, whom you're building your game for, and why it's so special. So I even ended up adding to that, kind of starting to scratch and paint pictures of my users, what they will eat, what kind of TV show they will look, where they go on vacation, and so on and so forth. Pretty simple stuff, but it's really, really helpful in the early stage of development to have a clear picture whom you are working for, whom you're building that great game, and later on develop based on that. On one hand, when, considering the user and adding value to his life, either through joy, fun, information, entertainment your game or application brings to the table, it's also important to recognize that, you're building it also for yourself. And a mobile game or a mobile application can help you to achieve the following things. Either you sell a lot of digital stuff or even physical stuff through mobile. That's a good purpose to have, to make money from sales, right? Or you want to acquire users, new customers for your existing business or for an upcoming business where you haven't figured out yet how to monetize, but at least it gives you value in terms of, user data, insights, and a huge customer base who might be worth something in the later future. If you have an existing product or a business which is already, distributing certain games or having established already a brand, maybe some of you is working in a department for a multinational brand, then you will recognize that mobile can actually help you, and especially also games, to build, everything around your brand, which then is perceived by the customer as an extra added value and pays back to your own brand as well, of course. And last but not least, the expectation management. Who else than Nike would, be the one leading sports application out there, building or using mobile to build upon their recognition within the existing customer group. Will it work? That's the major part whenever someone starts something new. Especially smaller developers tend to be like, going out, going forward. What really helped me and others as well is to spread the word as soon as you can. As soon as you're, set with, that will be my idea, application, the value I provide to my customers or to my players. Plus you have a kind of feeling where the business will lead to, how you will make money out of it. It's good to share that initial early idea with others. For example, use the conferences. Obviously, people from Apple are here, always helpful to share and feedback ideas back and forth with you about even an app which exists maybe only in your mind. Go to conferences, talk to people, get good feedback out of communities. Some developer communities out there are tremendously helpful. Really open, sharing communities, giving initial feedback on your ideas. Get familiar with the terms and conditions, simple as it sounds. Maybe your idea is violating, at the end of the day, Apple's or Google's terms and conditions, so that's a first reality check that it might be not doable, right, to proceed with your idea. On the other hand, be honest to yourself in order to start, and I know how hard it is, to start figuring out what the plan at the end of the day should look like as soon as you launch your game. When you sit down and start thinking how many users I will get, how many users I will or want or need to acquire for my game, how many will pay, how many will, do in-app purchases. It's always hard to get the first start, but also there, use your network, benchmark against other titles in your portfolio, benchmark against titles of other developers which have provided public information how they are doing in terms of users, revenues, and so on and so forth. Because a plan will guide you through the initial stages, later on through development, and of course as soon as you launch. And it's not the matter of if a plan is right or wrong, because I get the question, will we really do this 500,000 users? I said, I don't know, but at least you have a guideline as soon as you start acquiring users to measure, are you above that 500,000 or below it? And so, you can then start asking, why is it? Why I overperform? Why I do not achieve those goals? But this is something really important, and I cannot say that often enough, to have a plan in place even without having the first real user data to prove that plan. As soon as you start developing, and obviously we could spend probably a week going through game development, app development, with all the, technologies nowadays and the tools out there which are helpful and the experience everyone gathered. I only wanted to, touch a few things, touch the first part, which is really key to building a great iOS game. With the rise of the tablets especially, you have such a great opportunity to build something around that touch experience. I mean, the development part for a touch-based game or even an application is tremendous. And the key things I've seen here and always, come up are the things around the controls. In touch-based games, you have controls you have to build yourself, or you have to build the controls yourself. It's not as given as like with the joysticks. You have to consider how touch influences your game's nature at the end of the day. So controls designed for touch, meaning that you have the taps, the swipes, the gestures, which helps you to figure out how the game's nature at the end of the day will affect the gameplay, the fun, and the opportunity also later on maybe to monetize and engage and retain users much stronger than before. So starting with design for touch is really something where you can get an understanding how certain things relate to each other, interact deeply on the control part, but not only on that. I mean, interaction and feedback is something also provided through touch. I just wanted to give you an example. Everyone's probably seen those games where you steer a plane into an airport, or you bring a boat or a ship into the harbor by just simply showing the way the plane or the ship has to go. What you get here is like this experience on the user side around the design for touch that of course, he gets the feeling by touching it. He gets the instant feedback via audio, how the plane, for example, reacts. He draws the line to the airport. You immediately see that drawn line and the plane following it, plus the traction and the experience you feel when drawing it, like physically. That's something really, really neat and has to be taken care of. That it's not a layer you build on, you just have the graphics right and then you put the audio layer on top of it. It's rather a cycle which is cohesive and works together and gives at the end of the day a great touch experience within a game or within an application. When you develop a game, you have obviously a designer at hand, and a few times I've seen really, really great games being developed and designed, but falling short at the end of the last sprint when it comes to kind of designing for the sales pitch. And the sales pitch obviously happens in the App Store, right? The first point users connect with your game is the icon, and there you shouldn't fall short on design. You can have a lot of inspiration from the store itself, obviously, with a lot of detailed stuff, with 3D effects you can use. After you put a lot of sweat, time, and resources into the design of your game, you should you should pay attention and put the same sweat, time, and effort into design for icons and screenshots as well. That's all I have to say, basically, that this is so much key and forgotten once in a while, how important the icon design and the screenshot designs are, and how they can contribute to the success in the store, and later on, of course, to the success of your game, that, with variations like layers of trust, when you have a portfolio, simplification, and so on and so forth. There's so much creativity which can be applied to icon and screenshot design that you should recognize how important that is. If you had a session with your designer and you maybe end up with 3, 4, 5 different icon designs. You can do something like that in order to add some data to this process, right? You get back from your designer, let's say 3 variations of a potential icon you want to use in the store. Then you build simple mobile banners which have the same call to action, which have the same background color, which have the same basically size. You just change them by applying and adding the different 3 icons. You take $100, you put those banners on AdMob, let them run, you get the click-through rate, and then you have additional information and data to make a decision which one you actually go for. This is just an example how simplified that process actually looks by the end of the day. Can be applied for screenshots design as well. This is actually a client's project we did where we did not only figure out that this will be the final design of the screenshots, which we had running through some A/B testing beforehand, but only here we went the extra mile and figured out which one of those actually should be put first, because that's the one the user sees, right? So we were actually benchmarking all of those 5 screenshots against each other, figuring out which one is the most attractive and makes people click. So we put that one first in the App Store. It's just a nitty little detail, but really, really helpful, and we've seen also increase of organic downloads based on a good design for screenshots and icons, plus running even A/B tests for marketing materials like that. When it comes to the launch, everyone's saying, okay, that's the time when the marketing comes in. I disagree. I usually like to involve marketers as early as possible. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's no fight or borderline between them, but once in a while you start obviously doing the basic stuff initially, and then later on, maybe sometimes too late, the marketing side of the company joins in. Get them involved. Make sure that they know the style guides. Make sure the marketing people know the terms and conditions and all the documentation basically provided by Apple for building a game, so they get familiar what is able and have an understanding what is able, what is not applicable later on when they have maybe some great marketing ideas. Make sure to get access to the accounts so they get familiar early on how that looks like, because maybe they will be the ones later on who have to upload the screenshots, because that's maybe a marketing task, I don't know. Figure out how you want to localize. That's usually a thing when you say, okay, we want to move on, and then the marketer comes up saying, yeah, but we have maybe a potential in Portugal. So the app will be in Portuguese, of course, but also that affects later on the marketing materials, the specs for the store, and so on and so forth. So localization is really something you should discuss early on, because it affects your development tremendously when you want to make changes along the way. Tools for testing. Give them a feeling how test tools work, get them involved, make sure they do test the application in early stages, so they also can apply their later marketing planning accordingly. Ask proactively if you're a developer for marketing and analytic SDKs as early as possible, because I've seen it a lot of time. Game is done, launch day, marketing comes up saying, we have a new network in our media plan, but that requires an SDK. And then development says, well, maybe next sprint. Yeah, well, next sprint is after launch day, and then you're losing out maybe on a great network opportunity or something. So do consider that as an early stage discussion at least, or one of your points on the checklist prior launch. Acquire a lot of beta testers, not only for testing the game, but later on marketing might want to use them as the early, facilitators for when the game is live. If you acquire beta testers, make sure you engage them a lot, and then you utilize them basically during launch to spread the word, to give you the first initial feedback, also in the App Store, which is helpful, and basically, start sharing the word about your game. Soft launch, I don't know who's familiar with that when it comes to launching a game. A few people. So basically, all the big studios will do a launch before going global in countries like Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. Maybe Remy will tell us about something like that later on. Just to make sure, A, you have enough users on the game to get enough data to iterate and optimize before you launch globally. Also flying a little bit under the radar when it comes to marketing and PR kind of things. So soft launch, if you can afford it, if you can time it, obviously use such things prior to launch of your game. Wednesday is launch day. Sprint ends, or many deadlines end on a Friday evening, right? Upload's done, we go all home, weekend's coming. Big bug in the game, no one's available on support side. You come back on Monday, everything is screwed. You don't want to do this, so A, you should not release an app with the bug, but make sure that you also not forgo the opportunity of utilizing the bigger traffic in the stores. Usually Saturday, Sunday is peak when it comes to download traffic. So when you launch on a Wednesday or Thursday, this traction you get there already builds up for a better, higher ranking, and then you basically utilize and rank higher when the bigger traffic actually comes in. So that's why you should consider launching during the week instead of end of the week. As soon as it comes to going live, plan early, really. Make sure that you start considering and building a marketing plan as early as possible. And that is especially important during those days when the acquisition costs for games and applications range around $1, even a little bit more for the Android system. So in this competitive environment with such high acquisition costs, make sure that you plan early and plan your resources accordingly. Don't forget that an install of $1 is just an install. It's not the user yet. It's not the paying user even. So competition is fierce. Ranking is important. Good user quality is important. Find the right networks. Get the channels right. We will learn a lot about this later on as well. And then apply your budget accordingly. Don't plan too short. Build your marketing war chest. This is rather on the easy side of things, but really important. Before spending $1 of acquisition or for paid media, get your homework right, get your homework done. Have a good landing page, maybe build and produce an app trailer, work on PR materials. So having great screenshots, icon design to be used by journalists as soon as they start reviewing your game. Set up a social account. It's pretty easy. I mean, it has to come with a certain strategy of how to deliver certain informations and content there, but that's something which helps to build momentum for your game, engage users, even re-engage users at a certain time when they stop playing your game, but you're still in touch with them through Facebook or an email list, right? Beta testers, I was elaborating, really helpful. Think outside the mobile banner. App Store optimization, we touched that a little bit with the screenshot design. Make sure that within the App Store, your app is shiny, is gorgeous, is looking very attractive, so the user is tempted actually to hit the download button. Make sure that you are familiar with things like user exchanges, where basically for free, developers with a similar audience are able to promote your game and vice versa. If that's a tactic you want to use, there are certain things and platforms out there which are really helpful. Promo code promotions, Apple does that once in a while for paid games. So if you are having really an attractive game and maybe a partner who has a retail outlet, whatever, try to figure out if that might be useful to drive extra installs or sales for your game using promo codes. On the Android side, there are more stores than Google Play and Amazon, especially when you look into Asian markets, when you look into African markets. There's really significant alternative app stores out there which can help to give you an edge over competition. On top of that, as I said before, conferences, networking like here, start talking to people, engage them so you're ready when launch is coming. Analytics, just a few words that you get the structure right. I usually compare those three things. First, everything related to your installs, your sales numbers. It's pretty basic stuff. You basically get it out of iTunes Connect, and the reporting's there. When it comes to in-app analytics, obviously that's your user behavior. That's key. What is he doing in the application? How often is he coming back? Are you losing them? Where are you losing them? Great tools out there. Really, really helpful and important. And the last one, it's rather a newer field on the marketing side when it comes to really figuring out, as soon as you start mobile marketing, where is the most valuable user coming from? What channel delivers the user who spends $1.50 versus another channel where the user basically spends 50 cents, right? Attribution analytics can really make you see, just to simplify it, banner is here, clicks the banner, goes in the store, installs the app, comes out here and does something, purchase something, clicks something in your app. This whole line can be tracked using and applying attribution analytics. That would be it. Dziękuję bardzo.
Hello. So my name's Dave Verwer, and as Dave mentioned earlier, I run a training and consultancy business for iOS developers. I also put together a weekly email which kind of keeps people in iOS development up to date with what's happening in terms of news that's coming out, code that's being released, that kind of stuff, technical newsletter. So I'm going to talk to you today about some of the lower cost and practical things that you can do to give your game or app a little bit more of a chance of success in the store. My background is very much iOS, but a lot of these things are going to apply to all of the stores, really. As Stefan said, this process is not just something you think about towards the end of your development cycle. You need to really be thinking about marketing from the very beginning, from even having the idea for your game. You need to be thinking about how you're going to monetize that, how you're going to plan and get the marketing kind of organized for your application. So this goes across the whole process, really. And where you want to start is obviously with your idea, and then how are you going to kind of design your application so that it's easily marketable, so that you're not going to fight that problem of getting the word out because you've actually thought about it from the very beginning. Again, as Stefan says, the very first thing you should be doing is reading these guidelines. I had a client last year who took one of their web-based games and put a lot of money into building an iOS version of it. And there was a problem with the guidelines, and that game never made it onto the store. So this doesn't happen very often. These guidelines are not too onerous, but you do need to be aware of what's in there and whether your game is going to be kind of suitable for the store. The other thing, of course, you need to think about from the very beginning is what method of monetization are you going to use? And clearly, freemium is an option that many people are taking these days. You've got kind of 92% of top grossing already freemium. It's clearly a very successful business model for some people. But I feel at the moment that we're on a little bit of a cusp in terms of people's attitudes to free-to-play and freemium games. It's a good business model, but it shouldn't be at the expense of the game. And the game is, you know, there's a lot of freemium business models around at the moment that are artificially limiting players and actually taking some of the fun out of those games. And I think you want to really try and avoid that. And I'm going to talk about an example here of a game that's just come out on iPad. It's called Hearthstone from Blizzard, who I'm sure you're all aware of. It's actually their first entry into kind of mobile gaming. It's the first iOS game, and it's a freemium game, so it's completely free to play. It has in-app purchases for various items, and I mean, some of these in-app purchases are reasonably expensive. There's kind of a £35 in-app purchase there, so it's not going at the low end of stuff, although there are a kind of range of things. The key thing with this game, though, is those in-app purchases are not necessary. They never restrict what you can do in the game. They may speed you up a little bit, but there's always something fun to do. And the key thing about it is, regardless of any of those in-app purchases, the core of that game is a good core. It's a fun thing to do, regardless of any of the payment stuff. So really, that's the kind of, if you are thinking of freemium, just make sure that idea and that gameplay is there without having to artificially force people into feeling like they have to bring those purchases in. So you need to kind of think about this stuff right at the very beginning with your idea. The next stage, of course, is to actually build the application. And the key point that I'm going to make here is it's kind of coming back to that whole fun thing. No amount of marketing is going to make an average game very successful. And quality needs to be your ultimate kind of goal with all of this. And you need to really be quite brutally honest with yourself about how good what you've created is, and if it's not good enough, you need to go back and you need to, work on it more and get it better, because no matter what you do, you need to have that core of a quality game to really make that marketing. It's like the marketing is the accelerator for whatever you had initially, and if you have something amazing, that marketing is going to make it, really fly. But if you have something not quite so amazing, then it's like a multiplier. The marketing is just a multiplier. You want to think about how your application or game is going to fit with the operating system as well. So this is kind of at the core of some of that talk about quality. So if your application fits well on the platform, people are going to it's going to feel natural on the platform. So you need to think about iPad and iPhone, make it universal. You need to integrate things like Game Center. It's trivial to integrate this kind of stuff. It's really not a huge amount of time, but it does just give that platform fit to your application. Game controllers. So game controllers were a feature added in iOS 7. They don't take a lot of work to implement. It's basically a set of hardware devices that wrap around an iPhone or an iPad and give like a joystick type experience to your hardware. You do need to put some code in, you do need to support these things, but it's not a difficult thing to do, and it will just kind of elevate you on the platforms. The other thing you want to think about with when you're building your application is Apple don't give you customer details, and Google don't give you customer details. So you don't have any way to kind of build that relationship going forward. But there's nothing to stop you collecting people's details inside your application. So I picked MailChimp here, but there's a whole load of ways to get the word out to your customers afterwards. And as long as you make it kind of optional for your customers to give you that information, it's a great way to kind of start to build a marketing mailing list that you can then leverage with kind of future products or updates or whatever it is. Of course, you've got to be respectful with what you send out to those people, but it's good to kind of start that relationship with people, and you should integrate it into your application. So when you're building your application, the key thing here is that quality point. That really is more important than anything else. And if you concentrate on that, the rest of it will kind of follow. So you're nearing the end of the development cycle. You are starting to think about the process of launch and how are you actually going to get the word out to the right people. Obviously, if you've got a catalog or if you've got a lot of people already engaged with you, this is going to be an easier process. But if you're starting out from scratch, building that audience is difficult to do. You want to start getting influential people to take notice of what you're doing. Because when you actually come to do the launch at that point, those people are going to be incredibly useful to help you get the word out. And again, I want to look at an example here. So there was a game that was released recently called Monument Valley. And first of all, it's a great game. You know, it's a beautiful game. It's been exquisitely engineered. But they did something really interesting with starting to build the audience before release. So the guy who runs the company called Mills, he used Snapchat to start to engage with people pre-launch. And so if you're not familiar with Snapchat, it's social application, a little bit like WhatsApp or Twitter or something like that, but it has a key difference to those, which is you can send messages out with Snapchat to either a specific person or a group of people. It supports video, it supports images, but the images and videos can only be viewed for a certain number of seconds before they disappear forever. And so what they did with Snapchat on Monument Valley, I thought was fascinating in terms of people love to feel special. And so what they did was every day for about 3 or 4 weeks leading up to the launch of this game, they took a picture or recorded a short video and sent it out to everyone who was kind of following them on Snapchat. And it gave a real sense of exclusivity, because first of all, unlike Facebook and Twitter and a lot of social sites like that, this application is pushing content out to you. So instead of having to go and check that Twitter profile or Facebook page or whatever it is, this content is coming directly to you. The second thing is, if you want someone's attention for a few seconds, tell them that if they miss it the first time, they're never going to see it again. And you'll have their attention much higher level of attention than a more passive kind of social media. So these pictures kind of came out, and maybe it was a video with a phone over the shoulder of one of the designers working on a level. Maybe it was the daily stand-up meeting, which was this one here. But it really kind of gave that feeling of exclusivity, feeling of behind-the-scenes access, and certainly it worked for me. I started following this very closely at this point because it made me feel kind of almost part of the process. Now, obviously, it doesn't have to be Snapchat, it doesn't have to be any of these things, but think about some of the lesser-known social media networks. Add it to your Facebook and Twitter strategy as well, but have a think about interesting ways that you can get people's attention. I thought this was a great one. You also want to start collecting beta testers. Now, beta testers will always be a little bit biased because by the fact that they're spending their time looking at your application, they're probably already interested, they're probably already kind of engaged with you. But they can give great feedback, and you should listen to them and should make them feel part of that process. Because if you do, and especially if you've managed to get some influential beta testers in there, which is really what this is all about, they are going to be your best salespeople when the game actually gets released and comes out. So try and engage with these people. Find out where the people who you want to be your champions are living. Are they, engage with them, start to talk with them, start to build a relationship, get them involved, and it will pay dividends in terms of marketing assistance when you do launch. The other thing you want to do is you want to work well with Apple. So Dave stood up earlier and introduced himself. There's also Stefan over here. You want to talk to them as early as possible when you have things to kind of say and show to them. There's no guarantee that any talking with Apple will actually result in you being featured or anything like that, but the conversations you can have will make them aware of you, and even if it's not with the current project, even if it's the next project, that relationship is really important. But what Apple care about, more than anything, is that same point again. Apple are not going to help you promote something which isn't absolutely top quality. So it really always comes back to having that excellent product, first of all. So start to build that audience, start to engage with people, and just really just focus on making quality applications. So finally, it's time to launch your application. You want to start thinking about things like press releases, press kits, things like that. So, best advice I can give with the press release is the story of you simply releasing a game is not much of a story. You need to make the story about more than just the fact that you've developed something and released it. It needs to be something that a journalist or a blogger can actually find something about it, more than just I've released an application, that sparks their interest and will spark the interest of the people who are ultimately going to download and buy your game. So really try and, I mean, I can't give you all the stories, but you know, throughout the development process, or why did you make this game? It's more than just, well, here's my release. The other thing with the press release is you've got probably 30 seconds in terms of grabbing somebody's attention, maybe even less than that. Don't waste that first sentence saying who you are. Don't waste that first sentence saying that we're delighted to announce our new game. Of course you're delighted to announce your new game. You've just spent the last 12 months, but that's not the important part of that press release. That first sentence is critical in grabbing somebody's attention, and you want to really focus everything on those first few words. Sure, you can offer promo codes and you can do all that kind of stuff, but do that further down the press release. That first paragraph or first sentence even is critical. You want to create a press kit. So a press kit, the purpose of a press kit is once that press release has grabbed somebody's attention, this is where you flesh everything out and you give them everything they need to do their job as a reviewer or as a blogger or whatever. So press kits, in my opinion, are all about answering questions. So give the people, first of all, your contact details. It's amazing. Sometimes you'll find companies that it's actually quite difficult to get to talk to a human. With your press kit, you want to make talking to a human like the easiest thing in the world, so that if they do actually have any questions, it's not a barrier in the way of them talking to you. Include resources, include your screenshots, include your app icon, you know, anything they might want to include or link to or something like that. And this is a good place to also start to answer the deeper questions about your application. So again, I'm just going to nip back to the Hearthstone example here. So obviously they're a big company, they have a lot of marketing resources, and they have a lot of people working on that kind of stuff. But they've done just a great job with their press kit. I'd encourage you to go and have a look. There's all sorts of stuff there. But this document actually stood out to me. And this was a kind of frequently asked questions document that's included in that press kit. And it just answers all the questions that a reviewer or a journalist might have about it. It's also written quite casually. You know, there's a question here, why is Blizzard making a card game? And the answer is, well, we love card games. Like it's quite an honest, or it feels like quite an honest document, and quite a down-to-earth document. It's not particularly full of marketing speak. It's actually written quite down-to-earth. So once you've got your press releases, you want to start getting them out to the people who matter. Biggest tip I can give you here is, yes, you can use one of these PR services that distributes your press release to 800 sites. There's no harm in doing that, but they're not particularly, in my experience, very effective. Where you get the most effective engagement from these sites is actually doing it their way. So find the sites that you want to be featured on, have a look at how they like to be contacted. They've all got a page like this, which is kind of send us an app to review or give us the information about your application. Some of them will be an email address. Some of them will be a form that you have to fill in. It doesn't take you a lot of time to go through that process. And if you go through their way of doing things, you're more likely to get that initial 30-second read of the first line of your press release. And it's all about just removing all of these barriers to getting people to pay attention to you. What I also do is I keep a spreadsheet of how all these sites like to be contacted, so that you're only doing this job once. So, and then in the future, you know who you've talked to at which site, you know how they like to be contacted, and that makes updates and future projects easier to deal with as well. And again, don't forget to work with Apple. There's a couple of public email addresses here. There's no guarantee that anything you send to these email addresses will kind of make it anywhere, but there's also no harm in telling Apple what you're doing. I mean, the best place to talk to Apple is an event like this, but these email addresses are, you know, it's another potential little solution there. And your marketing doesn't finish when you've done that first release. You need to monitor your reviews very, very carefully. And yes, I mean, App Store reviews, like YouTube comments, they're occasionally not the sanest place in the world to be. But trends in your reviews are going to point out the problems with your application, and listen to those trends. Listen to those people who are telling you why your application isn't living up to their expectations. And it's very easy to kind of discount this kind of stuff, but you really should listen. Obviously, if you look at reviews just on the phone or something like that, you're only going to see reviews from your country. But there are plenty of services that will aggregate reviews, send you kind of a list of reviews from all countries, things like that. Release notes. It makes me cry when I see somebody who puts bug fixes in their release notes. You don't get many opportunities to talk to your customers. The release notes are a great place to actually have a little bit of communication. This point is actually slightly less important these days with automatic updates now. Those release notes do get viewed less than they used to, but that's no excuse to ignore this opportunity to talk to your customers and tell them what you've done, and don't just write bug fixes. It's easy, but it's lazy. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say to you on this subject. Keep going with those releases. Don't forget marketing in this process. Marketing is very much an ongoing task, and it's not something that just kind of is a burst and then done. You need to think about the whole way through. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks to Dave for spelling my name incorrectly. It's actually got a D in it, but we won't worry too much about that. It's really great to be at this event. It's really good to sort of meet we've had a really good event, meeting a lot of nice, great people and seeing some great games. And I think it's really the sort of thriving atmosphere and environment that you've got here in Krakow is just great. So well done. My name is Richard Pidgeon. I work for a company called Distimo, and we provide services around app analytics. So I don't want to sort of give you a sales speech, but I'll just tell you first a bit about the company, give you a global overview of a few trends that are taking place, have a look at the local market, and then I'll touch on a few sort of marketing strategies and how they affect the performance and downloads of apps. My colleague Chris is speaking later in here this afternoon, so he'll take a deeper dive into some of the numbers and the analytics surrounding the stores that we have. First of all, I wanted to ask, how many of you are involved in the marketing activities of your apps? Okay, and how many of you are currently using any sort of analytics tools to help with that marketing activity? Great, so it's a good number of you. So Distimo, we have a lot of free products out there. So there are lots of companies out there with free services that you should be using surrounding sort of the analytics and conversion rates of your products. So we have an analytics tool that provides you with data for all of your downloads, revenues, reviews, and rankings for all the apps that you have in all the stores in all around the world. So that's not just iOS and Google Play. That's obviously Windows Phone, BlackBerry, and a few others. We also have some conversion tracking tools, and free conversion tracking tools that enables you to see exactly where your users are coming from. So you create a single URL, run that in a campaign, and then you can track and see where your valuable users are coming from. So as Stefan mentioned earlier, it's really important to make sure that you're seeing where the most valuable your most valuable players are coming from, so that then you can reinvest that money in the successful campaigns and forget about the less successful campaigns. We also have a large number of publications and resources available on our website that give useful insights to you of how the larger companies are using analytics tools and trends in the market. So please, if you haven't done so already, please go and have a look. So first of all, taking a look at the global, what's happening out there in the global. This is data from April 2014. You can see that United States and Japan are clearly leading the way as far as revenues are concerned, with Korea in third place and China in fourth place. So China, the data there is just from iOS data only, so there's no data regarding Google Play, but still they're in fourth place. Taiwan back in 10th place, and that again, they're very predominantly driven by the Google Play revenue and not iOS. So taking a look at what's happening in the local market, comparing what's happening in Poland with US and Japan, I thought it was interesting to see the sort of split between the devices and where the revenue's coming from. And US is obviously very much driven by iOS, Japan more so with Google Play. But Poland, the majority of the revenue between the split with iOS is coming from the iPad revenue. So taking a look at what's happening with the rate of growth as far as revenue is concerned, Poland's very similar to the rest of the globe. Apple leading the way with majority of the revenues, but Google Play is catching up slowly, a 13% rise for the month in the first quarter of 2014. Taking a little bit of a deeper dive into the leaderboards within Poland, very similar to every other sort of non-English speaking country, a lot of localized content within there. But what is different within the Polish market is on the grossing leaderboards, the number of non-games that are in the top of the grossing leaderboards. Normally in most of the rest of the world, 9 out of 10 of the top in the grossing leaderboard are all games. But Poland, for some reason, four of the top 10 are news applications and navigation applications. So I think that sort of indicates that the Polish market are more open to paying for content. So taking a quick look at sort of three strategies that you might not have any control of, but I think as Dave mentioned, it's really important to build those relationships with Apple so that you can find out who the key players are that you need to be speaking to help get featured in the different markets. So this is looking at an app from Nickelodeon, Nick. It's got featured in the category which is Kid Choices Awards 2014 in March earlier in the year. you can see the dramatic rates of increase in downloads as they release the category. The second spike is actually the day of the awards. And here's another example of 4 apps and the effect that has of getting featured within the If You Like category within the store. Has a massive effect on the number of downloads. But it's not the case that all categories have a dramatic effect. Here's an example of one app, Super Brothers, and the massive spike on the left-hand side of being featured in Spectacular Stories, but very little effect on the right-hand side when it got featured within 10 incredible indie games. So there's no sort of silver bullet of how that it's definitely being featured as having a massive effect. It depends on what category you get featured in. We take a deeper dive into the whole feature being featured in the app stores within our latest publication. It's available on our site as well. So I think it was Stefan that mentioned, just doing a soft launch. All the big guys are doing soft launches in the lesser countries. This is taking just taking a look at Rovio and where they did a soft launch. They did a soft launch in sort of New Zealand, Australia, and Mexico before moving on to Canada and the US later on. The reasons for doing a soft launch is, as Stefan mentioned, sort of discover the bugs, get some sort of valuable data and valuable feedback from your users, and have a look at their spending behavior. And select the right business model. So important to make sure that you select the right business model. An example of this is Roller Coaster Tycoon by Atari. So it's an old game that's a console game. They released a paid app with in-app purchases, and the sort of reviews that they got from their users slating the app because they weren't expecting that type of, they weren't expecting that type of experience of. Sorry, they were expecting the same experience they had 10 years ago for the console game, but they weren't getting that, and then felt a bit cheated, and so started slating the app off. That's it from me. As I said, Chris is speaking in here later on, and he'll take a deeper dive into some of the analytics that we have and the importance of that. So thank you very much.
Hello everyone, I'm Remigiusz Kościelny. I'm co-founder and CEO of Vid Games company. We are on the market in 7 years right now, and I built my first mobile game over 11 years ago on the feature phones, very, very long time ago. So everything changed dramatically over the time, over the last years especially. So today I'd like to share our story about real boxing. We launched the game. Maybe a few more words about us. We are listed on the New Connect market in Poland, and we recently, end of last year, we got a Best Indie Developer App Store Awards, and now straight to the point. Real boxing. We launched the game. In November 12th, and first thing I'd like to talk through here is why real boxing really? I mean, it's easy to make any game you like, but it's really important to think which kind of game you should really develop and publish. So first thing is to if possible find a niche and own it. So we have a really long weeks looking on the App Store and watching what's there, what's popular, what's not. Back then, we had a few casual games from published earlier this year, but they were not particularly so much successful that we want them to. So there was only one boxing game on the App Store. Yes, it was Fight Night from EA, but it was not so great, and we thought that because we have that team that can make a better game, that we can afford it financially, and also because there was not so many fighting games at all, we decided that maybe this is the way to go. So also it was, wise decision from a production point of view. I mean, working on racing game or action game, you need to build really large environments. In this kind of game, you need to build just few environments, arenas, and focus and distinguish visual quality of the characters. And because we like to, shine the visual quality of our game, we decided that this is the way to go. And the name is also very important. This time, I mean, with real boxing, it was like, it came just to my mind really, really quickly. Real boxing. Why real boxing? The name is simple. You know what the game is about just from reading the name. You don't need to, think about what was it. So it's informative, it's catchy, and it's referred to other games. Because back then there was a real racing, which is, it's racing game, but it's, the same quality, the same, experience we'd like to deliver to players with our games. It was obvious choice. I must say it's working last few months with Godfire. We spent, I think, 4 months thinking only about the name. It was really much harder than with real boxing. Okay, after a year and a half on the App Store. App Store was the first platform we launched the game. We got 700,000 paid sales of the game on the iOS alone. We reached top 10 paid games mark in over 140 countries, and we hit the best sports game in almost all of them. Right now we are having 260 monthly active users over the period of last 6 months. The brand itself, the brand of real boxing is recognized. It's launched on many platforms. After the iOS, we launched it on Android, we launched it on PlayStation Vita. The game is coming to PC next month, and there's still a lot to come on all platforms. Right now we are transforming the game into the truly free-to-play. I mean, the game is still on the paid, side of the things, but as the market is changing, we are seeing, this transition, and eventually we are right now in the transition to free-to-play model as well. So first thing we had to, because this was a new IP, the game was unknown, it was not based on any major IP, we had to build an awareness. So back then we decided to hire a PR agency called Distimo for a period of 9 months. It was like 6 months before launch and 3 months after it. And we had a panel yesterday, there was a James with Distimo as well. And choosing the PR agency is not only about writing the press messages. There's a lot of added value from that PR company can give you. It's feedback about screenshots, feedback about the game. So we work along with them even before we made our first public announcement, which was 3 months pre-launch. We showed the first material on Gamescom. It was in August. Launch was in November. And during this period, from first announcement to launch, we sent over 5 media messages with different materials, revealing more and more about the game. And we ran an official web page and a Facebook channel as well. We were making of videos, a lot of materials, extras, and also as much important is building awareness in the press. As much important is building the awareness at Apple. So we need to start to talk developers. The guys said the same. As soon as the game is good enough, or even if it's only concept, it's always good to reach Dave or other guys, or send your game to the emails Dave showed it earlier. So yeah. So first material we released video trailer. It was CGI video. we had another discussion about it yesterday on this panel. So, and we got to the point that launching a CGI is good to have, it's nice to have if you can afford it, but it's never as good as actually gameplay footage. Gameplay footage is always better because this is something this is something that press want to see. But if you can afford, if you are building the longer campaign over this, say, 3 months, it's good to have it as well. The icon. The icon is the single most important marketing material you need to work on. It's not good to leave it to the end and start to work on it on last sprint, last week of the development. It's again weeks of work, dozens of iterations before you get to the point that actually the icon is clean, is distinctive, is expressive, is polished, and readable even in small resolution. Because here on the screen it looks great, but on devices, especially on the earlier iPhones, the icons are small and not always readable as good as in the bigger formats. So the icon is really the very most important thing. Screenshots. Yeah, we decide to, after launch, after a few updates, we decide to make a cover picture. It's more like a banner. This is the picture, the cover screen showing the first time when the user is going into the application. So right now in each update we are showing here what the update is about. So this is the screenshot of latest update where we announce weekly tournaments. The other screenshots, the second one is showing, I think, yeah. Sorry. So we decide to take the second screenshot from the fight. So it's important that the players going straight into seeing what the game looks like in action. The other one is here again we are showing here the place where players can get into the weekly tournament. So in the third screen we are showing what's new in current update. There's another screen from fights, and the last one is also showing some features. That's because the nature of the game, where actually if we decide to show 5 screens from the fight, that will all looks pretty much the same. Always 2 fighters, some arena, blood and sweat. So we decide to spread more information about the game and show also the features from many features from this is actually the screen before multiplayer fight where players can bet on their own skills and move on to the fight. So again, the next one is store description. It's important, but not that much as icon and screenshots. But it still needs to be written in clean marketing language. If there's any, you should include review quotes from press at the top. List only most important features. It's not good to make like 30 features because you are losing the point what the features are most important one. Follow-up links to your Facebook channel, to your video materials, official website whatsoever. What's new section, it's also important that Dave said it's not bug fixing or polishing, it's not good. It's another field that you can sell your game, and keywords optimization at the end. All right, so before launch, this was our single most important company project. We work around the clock for a number of weeks, and not everything went great. We finally submit the game 2 weeks before launch. It's too late. You should take these 3 weeks to go through the certification process, and when you go through, you will have promo codes, and you need this time to deliver promo codes to press. So 2 weeks is really late. You should do this at least 3 weeks before planned launch. With Realboxing, as I mentioned, not all features we'd like to were included. Not all of them were polished as much as we like to, which caused some unpositive feedback. I will show it later. And again, before launch, when we had these promo codes, we got to the point when we built awareness. We sent promo codes to press. We talked to as many media guys we know personally. Our agency, Distimo, also worked the same on their end. So we eventually sent the message to this 800 press through them, but we still work on the most important, like Pocket Gamer or Touch Arcade. We talk to them directly. So the launch date was 15th of November 2012. We got Apple's Editor's Choice distinction, so this big banner that probably everyone wants to have. And at the day, we got really wide press coverage. Most of the very important sites like Touch Arcade, as I said, or Pocket Gamer, they put their reviews. Most of them, there was 80-90%, so the game was really good reviewed. There was few bad, like 50 or 60, but the average right now on the Metacritics, for instance, we're having, I think, 76, so it's good enough. But again, the date was not great. I think we launched 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, and it's on all these occasions when there is a Christmas or Thanksgiving or a few other dates over the year, everyone dropping the price to 99 cents. So when you're launching too close with $4.99 and everyone else going down to 99 cents, it's hard to fight with this wave of promotion. So there needs to be enough time between your launch, especially if you're launching on a higher price, or between this date and anything in the future that that will change the prices down. Okay, and after the launch, as I mentioned, this because we launched to the game not that great that we wanted, we got some negative Apple item reviews. People were complaining that the game is not working on all devices, especially these low-end devices. And from perspective, this was really wrong for us. So initial spike of downloads last only for about 10 days. And then we went down in the charts, but still we were pushing for more reviews, for more press coverage. We done a social contest, we do some coverage on our Facebook page, and another spike of sales we got over the Christmas period. And after this initial 6 months of being on App Store with Realboxing, I must say we wanted much more, but we never give up. It's even if our game is paid, we treat the game as a service. So over the period of the year, the half, we launched 13 updates. Not all of them were major, but first few were focused mainly on polishing and bug fixing, even though we do not wrote about in the what's new. But still, the updates combined with possible featuring, this is another spike of sales, the real large spike, as Richard showed, that this is something to fight for. So because we keep working on the game on all the months, and we are still doing this, we are still launching the updates. Right now we switch from 3 months to 2 months. Each 2 months there is a new update coming out. This is something that make your game up in the charts, and there's still interest from the players. So over the time we add more content, we add arenas, we add characters, we add more languages. On the launch day we got only FX, and then we add Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Russian, and each time we add these languages, we see a really large spike of sales in these particular countries. So I think this 9 languages is something, it's the set of minimum languages you should support. We also change initial sequence. When we start, there was too much of time before the player really launched the game, started the game, to the point when he could really play it. So we changed it that this period was much shorter. So right now, when you launch when you start the game, you are going straight into training. You're seeing how the game looks like, and eventually, when you go through the training, you are going to main menu, and you can go whenever you like from there. We also add more analytics. Focus very much how to monetize better, because even if we are a paid game, we are having some microtransaction options. These options are not pushing players to buy them. This is just an addition to this they can do without spending any extra money on the top of the price on the store. And this is even, it's always tricky to give them these opportunities and to not push too hard, because otherwise you're getting bad reviews that, it's always happening. We're having this, very little, but still few reviews each month that there is a pay to win, that players need to spend any money that, even if they buy the game. So it's really, you need to do this really carefully. Yeah, and last few updates we focused very much on multiplayer. We've seen from analytics, we've seen, because we've seen what players are doing to the game, thanks to analytics, we know what kind of features they like to play. So we focus on these features, we build around multiplayer, and we keep going. Right, so working with Apple, I mean, as I mentioned, it's good to show the game early on. You don't need, you can't count on luck. I mean, overnight success is still possible. There are some games, coming from nowhere and being successful a lot. But in majority of these things, you need to do your work. You need to show the game to Apple. You need to work your way to media. You need to talk to players. And So working Apple, keep them posted on development progress. So we have, show the game to them even before we launch very first announcement publicly. We informing them about our upcoming updates. So each time we are launching the update, we are treating the same as almost the same as we are launch the game. And of course, you never know you get any featuring in this or other store, but eventually we got a lot. I mean, we got this editor's choice, almost every major update is featured, and the game is in many collections. But it's not, it's not coming from nowhere. It's because that the game is great, because the game is outstanding, because it fills the niche, and players, like the game. That's why. So the formula, I'm high. That's why we made the real boxing. That's why right now we are making Godfire. We want our games outstand from the crowd. The product is always the most important thing, and the quality of the marketing materials as well, because this marketing materials, this icon, these screenshots or store description, this is something that is selling your game. Relationship is as much important as these things, and coverage of press. But just recently I heard many words that it's media in general is not that much important anymore, especially when it comes to mobile games. Players are buying the games from the store really based on what's featured or what's they like. They do not care that much about these reviews going through the media. And updates are important. I recommend each 2 or 3 months you should do something with your game. We should announce new new functionality that is interesting from players, and you need to know what to do by, from reading what's going on with analytics. And cross-check. Cross-check is also important. So each week we are having this meeting, and guys at the studio, they're checking reviews, they're checking what's going on, in media, and if there is anything wrong, we are trying to react as soon as possible. It's even more important after you launch the updates. So, and community and support management. We are having a community manager. We are trying to talk to people through forums. We are responding to almost every single request that coming to our support email. So players are really pleased that even if we not always can, fix the problem they're having with our game, they're pleased that there is a connection, that we are talking to them. We are saying, okay, thanks for that. This problem will be addressed in the next update. So even this is enough. It's enough to keep them happy. So it's about it. I mean, we keep changing things. I mean, some of the things we've done with Realboxing, we are doing the same with Godfire. Some of the things we changing. Say, right now we are doing almost all of the PR activity ourselves. So we are doing much less with agency because we are having people in-house for that. And we are seeing that making this media coverage ourselves, I think it's going to better. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentations. Any questions to all the gentlemen that are actually were presented in the...
Hi. I have two questions concerning the marketing of the application of the games. Okay, and the one you mentioned that the icon and the screenshots are very important for launching and for informing the gamers about the game. How did you choose the way of comparing the new version of icons or the new version of screenshots, which should be presented to the final gamers? My question is about the way you present the different icons if you choose the right one for the final release. Because I will explain why I'm asking this question. I found several times that the icons, the final icons, is presented among the others. It means when you choose the simulate environment, like App Store, and put your final or the other icon among the others you want to present. And after that, you can choose the best icon you want to present to the final gamers. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
It's maybe not in English, but...
No. Well, obviously, let me start with two things, how people find good apps in the Apple App Store. One is discovery. So they basically get inspired by the features, by the lists, by the charts, and so on and so forth. The other way of finding is search. So they have a certain title in mind or a certain solution they are looking for a specific app. When in both ways, a great icon makes your app stick out, apart, from other competitors among certain similar applications. So that's why it's really important to have the best icon, the most compelling, sticky, polished icon there is. And during the development or preparing a launch, you can use various tools and environments to test out which one works best. Obviously, the proof of concept you get only when your app is live. What we've seen even after changing the icon post-launch. So first we started with icon 1, and then we figured, okay, it might be the opportunity to adjust it a little bit, to make it more clear. A good example, for example, is Supercell. Clash of Clans, they changed so far the icon twice. I was not involved in that project, but there might be obviously some reason behind it, why they changed it. So what they are doing, or what you can do, is run user tests internally. You know, just put it, the most simple approach would be print it out, put it on the wall, and let your team vote during a week which one they like best. A more specific approach is, like I've mentioned before, run certain ad campaigns, comparing the variations in terms of which one achieves the highest click-through rate in an environment like, you know, mobile websites or any other ad networks you might want to use for that.
Any other questions?
I have another one about soft launch. How to choose the countries for the soft launches, and what would be the special case if we want to launch the localized application, if it is even possible to prepare something like a soft launch.
You want to take that?
So what we see from a number of developers is the way they choose the countries, they have a look at some of the competition and see where the competition are having success. Obviously, you're not going to choose the big countries that were up on the list. You're going to choose a similar app to that you're going to be launching, or a similar game, and see which countries they've had success in there, and go further down the sort of the table. So you're picking out the sort of 5th, 6th, 7th countries. I think those examples of Australia, New Zealand and Mexico are sort of the type of countries that are good. I can't answer the second half of the question.
The other one, when to localize and what markets you localize for, right?
Is it possible at all to prepare some soft launch for the localized applications?
Well, obviously, if your app is, let's say, in Portuguese and you target Portuguese-speaking countries, you can launch. You can launch in Brazil and Portugal prior your global launch than when you have the app available, let's say, in 10 other languages, right?
If you have French, for instance.
French,
Yes.
you can particularly launch only in France if you want to.
Yes, okay, but I'm talking about the soft launch. If you want to choose country.
You mean on an even lower level than the country level? No, there is no possibility to do so.